Ladies and gentlemen, by expanding the United Nations Security Council, as the proposition suggests, the internal structure of it based in 1940s remains the same, leaving the systematic faults unanswered and untreated, while only the representation of countries increase, which is not a necessity at the moment, because as my colleagues pointed out, there is sufficient representation of countries in the UNSC. Yes,
the mandate of the UNSC was amended in 1940s, and the economic environment of the 1940s is not just as it is in the 21st century. So when there were only 51 members in the UN, there were only 11 SC members. But when there are 192 members in the United Nations General Assembly, why is there only 15 members still remaining in the SC? Why is this huge imbalance between the UNSC Council?
So in order to remedy this situation, you are suggesting more representation?
We are suggesting regional representation.
Define regional representation, madam.
Like, Australia is a continent. Where in the SC is Australia represented? Australia as a country and as a continent is not represented. And we are talking about veto powers. The veto powers concept should be completely eradicated, and number of permanent seats should be increased. So as you earlier saw, the southern hemisphere is ill represented. Why is this? So we want expansion in every form, in every possible forms.
Because, madam, if they had the need to come to the United Nations Security Council in order to get themselves clear with, or whatever, get themselves clear that nobody is going to threat them, they would have come by now. They didn't come because they didn't have the need. And moving on, ladies and gentlemen, but as we suggest, by reforming the United Nations Security Council, the internal structure of it is changed. It is subjected to changes to a timely manner, from which modern issues are addressed, are catered in an impartial, unbiased, democratic manner. I cannot take your question, madam. So, ladies and gentlemen, who suggests the better solution here, the proposition or the opposition? So, moving on, further elaborating on the lack of democracy of the United Nations Security Council, the crisis in Burma, where the United Nations Security Council could not interfere as China vetoed, having a fair reason on their hand, but the real motive was not to have NATO and US forces near their borders. And so thousands of people were killed right in front of the eyes of the world. Nobody could address this because, ladies and gentlemen, one person vetoed, one country vetoed. And madam, do you call this democracy? Do you or don't you?
That's what we're trying to say. We need veto power concept should be eradicated and more permanent seats should be maintained. So if more than 1,000 people have died in that, that's because the present UNSC is not up to standard. Why? Because it needs to be reformed, it needs to be expanded.
Madam, what you are saying is only increasing the representative countries. What we are saying is reformation in order to change the internal structure. And ladies and gentlemen, moving on, in Afghanistan was attacked by America even when there were wars against. Do you call this democratic? And Iraq was invaded due to petty political reasons. Where is democracy here? Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we made three suggestions as equal distribution of power among both permanent and non-permanent members, the necessity of 2 or more vetoes in order to null a resolution, and allowing the use of veto for only critical matters. There can be other suggestions, ladies and gentlemen, but these suggestions guarantee a reformation within the United Nations Security Council. So we stand our ground by saying that United Nations Security Council should not be expanded. Thank you.
With the wrap-up of Face Off, it can be indeed said that both the proposition and the opposition have progressed, however, have indeed forgotten certain fundamentals in the debating arena. We're ready to provide both the teams with a third-party opinion. They will be allowed to consult their coaches. Till then, let's take a short commercial break. Welcome back. With the conclusion of the last and final lifeline, both the proposition and the opposition have already consulted their coaches. And we sincerely hope that the errors in procedure, as well as the minor flaws that were caused by both the teams, will be avoided as they proceed forward. This will be the rapid fire. Proposition, opposition, the floor is now yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, Moving on from representation, I have to present some points in the Charter, Article 53. The term any state, as used in a certain paragraph of this article, applies to any state which during the Second World War has been an enemy of any signatory in the present Charter. And we are asking for expansion, and we are asking for feasible amendment so that countries will not have old rivalries. Yet, the opposition has been speaking of reformation, but does not understand that it will lead to expansion one day.
Before anything, we need to do some clarification. Ladies and gentlemen, you take Stein Studios. If you build more buildings and add more studios, that's expansion. And if you replace Stein Studios with Stein Theatre, that's reformation. Those two are two concepts, not the same concept. Even in the long run, it won't happen.
We are not only talking about the expansion of the member state, we are talking about the expansion of the Charter also. The provincial rules and regulations of the Security Council, they were first adopted in 1942 and they were last amended in 1980. So they were totally unorganized and they were totally outdated for nearly a decade. So do you believe that with these Security Council's provisional old and ancient rules and regulations, it won't be help to bring the peace and security with the whole wide world?
Ladies and gentlemen, the proposition wanted to expand the Charter. Ladies and gentlemen, expanding the Charter is a reformation, which the proposition is agreeing. They are agreeing with our own argument. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give the definition for reformation. Reformation is improving an organization or a system by making changes to it. Changes to it here refers to a radical change from the core, which they want to amend the Charter is a structural change, which is reformation, not an expansion. The definition of expansion is an act of making something increase in size or amount or importance. So ladies and gentlemen, get your facts clear, get your definitions clear, because these definitions are from a worthy source. They are from the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, not like your self-made definitions.
The opposition is on the fact that the proposition is believing today, in today's debate, reform leads to expansion, and that's what we are also asking for. And the opposition is telling indirectly on that they are on the proposition side. So speak to your hearts and say directly to the audience and the Sri Lankans that even the opposition is on the fact, the universal truth that the Security Council prevailing today must be expanded.
Ladies and gentlemen, I speak from my heart. And I have proved to you that reformation is not expansion and not even a part of expansion. Okay, and the fourth speaker of the proposition said that USA hates Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, USA and Israel are the best pals ever. And what I said was, USA vetoed against 40 times protecting the resolutions condemning Israeli settlements in the West Bank of Palestine. That's a good thing, ma'am, for Israel. And also, the proposition talked about rivals. And they also talked about India should be represented as a permanent country. And India's rival is Pakistan. Then what will happen to the fate of Pakistan? You cannot have such type of expansion. What you should is democratize the whole process and give each and every member vote and equal right and power.
Reformation is a big change. It means, it tells that, it ironically tells that it is an expansion. So, thank you for joining with us and thank you for agreeing with us, my dear worthy friends. And moving on to another sector about transportation. When transporting economically valuable goods through this air, sea and land, the pirates and the underworld thugs and military groups can steal all these stockpiles and they can destroy them. And they can, so the economic balance of the whole wide world will be destroyed within 1 second. So without taking any steps to prevent these drastic and most unthreatful situations in the world, don't you think that Security Council is making a good and a very clear path to be more powerful for these terrorist gangs in the near future?
Not really. Economy of the 40s is not the economy of the today. Exactly, madam. That's the problem we have of having the veto power today. So adding more veto power countries is going to make the posture more critical. So do you want the veto power to be misused by more countries?
No, sir. Answering about the question about Palestine and Israel, I had to point out that because of expansion, because of some veto powered countries disagreeing with the expansion of the United Nations Security Council, there has been the 9/11 Movement Summit recently, and countries like Iran and some people from Palestine and various bodies have represented the summit, and the SG of the the United Nations has represented and asked and has proposed a report to the SG telling that
Palestine should rise as a certain, another country, and that Iran has portrayed that the summit as a triumph over Western attempts to isolate it of its disputed nuclear activities. So isn't it right that we need to expand the council to give chances to countries like Iran? For example, Iran has a peaceful nuclear energy program.
Still, the proposition agrees that Israel and America are enemies. It's correct, right? They're friends. Sorry, they're friends. Okay. Now, the second speaker asked where Australia is represented in the map. Well, ma'am, Australia's representation by the regional group called Western Europe and others, and it also comes under the Asia Pacific group. Australia has 2 representations in 2 groups. So, ladies and gentlemen, get your facts clear before coming.
And dear madam, you said that UN had 51 members in 1945 and now it have 191 members. My dear madam, we are talking about a security issue regarding the world and where the decision should be taken quickly. And if we have 191 members in the council, there will be more contradictions, more problems, more internal influences, and that's why we say the representation is more than enough. What you want is democratize so that each and every country in the UN Security Council gets the equal power so that they can utilize it to the betterment of the world and the betterment of the peace. Thank you.
The closure of rapid-fire intensity has indeed built up. We saw both the proposition and the opposition being extremely aggressive, and certain points about international relations between countries could be questioned. But we're ready to move into the closing statements. Opposition, the floor is now yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, throughout this course of debate, they have been harping on the fact that Australia is not included in the United Nations Security Council, but my dear colleagues have pointed out it is being included. And they also said that African countries are not represented in United Nations Security Council whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, African countries are represented by South Africa, Togo and Morocco. Apparently, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition has not done their research properly. And ladies and gentlemen, they want all the countries to represent the United Nations Security Council. So what happens in a situation where quick decision should be made? Now imagine there's going to be a mass massacre, so quick decision should be made. In order, there should be a little people with superpowers. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why we say all the peoples, all the countries should not be included in the United Nations Security Council. Only limited number of countries should be included, but with democracy. And ladies and gentlemen, their argument is like saying making all the students in a school prefects. Ladies and gentlemen, prefects of a school should be there. But when it comes to prefects misusing their power, the prefect's court or the prefect's guild should be reformed in order for them to not misuse the veto power, in order to not use the superpower. So ladies and gentlemen, that's why we've been suggesting to you that it is not an expansion which is needed for the United Nations Security Council. It is a reformation which is needed in order to change the internal structure in a timely manner. And they've been harping on the fact that expansion is reformation. Ladies and gentlemen, they came up with their own definition. We also could have come up with our own definition, but we didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been reliable throughout this course of debate. And even a 5-year-old can understand the difference between reformation and expansion, ladies and gentlemen. No offense on you, dear proposition. So, ladies and gentlemen, throughout this course of debate, we showed you that there's sufficient representation in the United Nations Security Council. What's missing is democracy, its lack of democracy. In order to establish democracy, we should reform the United Nations Security Council, but not expand the United Nations Security Council, and thereby having an undoubtful unity of nation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good day.